Alright, welcome everybody. This is part 2 of our video on lesson 9.5 about completing the square. Now this is a little bit of a trickier video today. I want to make sure you guys understand this concept. When it has an equation that where a is not 1, and if you guys remember standard form equation, right, is ax squared. So you would have ax, you would have ax squared plus bx, right, plus c, right? And so we're looking for anything where a is other than 1. The previous video we had everything as 1. This one's a little different. Okay, now what we're doing is the setup at the beginning is exactly the same, right? Where what you're going to do is you're going to solve first by adding 20 to both sides, because we're still going to isolate first. Okay, so once you isolate the equations here, then you would solve it out. So you have 5k squared plus 20k. Now that equals, that would be 25, right? Because you're adding it to both sides. Now here's the tricky part. What we're doing is we're going to get rid of the a value and make it a1. We have to make, when you're completing this square, you have to make the a value 1 again. So the only way to make a1 would be to divide by 5, right? And remember, what you do to one thing, you have to do to everything. Okay, so we're going to divide everything out by 5. All right, so how this works is after you divide it by 5, you write out your equation here. So this would be k squared. Then this would be 20 divided by 5 is going to be 4k equals 5, right? Now what you're going to do is complete the square. So remember, you take 4 divided by 2, that would be 2, and then you square it. So our value here is going to be 4. So this is plus 4, right? So have this simple setup. Now what you're going to do when you add 4 to this side, remember you got to do this side as well, and now you simply solve it. So this setup would become k plus 2 squared, and it equals 9. And now we have our nice little setups. And one thing that you guys got to also remember is kind of what this is doing is it's factoring out a 5 and just getting rid of it completely, right? So now you take the square root of both sides, and when you do that, you would have k plus 2 equals plus or minus 3. And now you can split your equation. When you split your equation, it's perfect, where it be k plus 2 equals 3. And then you have k plus 2 equals negative 3. Then you do your simple math by subtracting 2 from both sides, and you'd get k equals 1 and k equals negative 5, right? Hopefully you guys understand that. Okay, now let's do another one. All right, so we're going to add 67 to both sides. And when you do that, you're going to end up with 8x squared plus 16x equals 64. Now we're going to, since a is not 1, we have to make it 1. So remember, you're going to divide by 8. Divide by 8 all the way across the board. We'd end up with x squared plus that would be a 2x equals 8, right? So now what you're going to do is you're going to do your simple thing where you complete the square again. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Then you plug that in as a 1 here, add a 1 here to this side, and you'd end up with, again, x plus 1 squared equals 9, right? And now we're going to take the square root. So it's a kind of the simple process, but what you guys need to do is understand that we got to factor something out first, and then not to get kind of freaked out by what you're looking at. But if you do the math correctly, you guys can kind of see how things kind of repeat, right? Where we've had an x plus 1 already, and so we've had a square root of 9 already, and we've had a bunch of different things that we're doing repeatedly. And when you do those things repeatedly, you guys learn patterns, and that's the most important thing when you're completing the square, is learning the patterns that are associated with the math. When you guys learn these patterns, it makes things a lot easier, right? So this becomes x is 2 and negative 4. If you can identify these patterns early and often, guys, you will be successful in everything that you do. And that's the key important value that you need to take away from all of these lessons, is learning the patterns that develop and understanding these math. And now some of you, I know, struggle with that, and that's okay. As next year, when you get into geometry, you're going to be doing completing the square again. And so hopefully you guys will learn the patterns that associate there at that level. All right, so we divided by 3, so we get x squared plus 4x, and then that equals 6. And then you complete the square, so 4 divided by 2 is 2. Square that, that would be 4. So it's plus 4 to both sides, right? And now we have our first tricky one that I've ever showed you, and that would be, when you solve this out, this is going to be x plus 2 squared, right? And then equals 10. And now you have the square root of everything here. So your answer ends up being x plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 10. You can't really change that. And so instead of me showing you guys the problem repeatedly again, I'm just going to do a quick math here. -2, -2, and that's your answer, right? Plus or minus the square root of 10 minus 2. Okay, now what I want to make sure you guys do is work on these guided practices, and then pause the video, and then we'll give you the answers, and we'll go from there. Good luck. All right, hopefully you guys pause the video from here, right, instead of doing it on when I had to dial over the thing. Plus 17, plus 17. Now you solve it out, right? So this is 3x squared minus 6x equals, and that would be, according to my cheat sheet, that is 9, right? Then you divide everything by 3 across the board to get rid of that 3 there. Then you'd end up with x squared minus 2x. And then I'm just going to complete the square right now. So that would be a plus 1 again, right? And then because you take 2 divided by 2, then you square 1, that's a 1. And then this is going to be equal to 3 plus 1 over here. Now you have your setup. This would be x minus 1 squared equals 4. And then you have, once again, a perfect square setup, right? So you'd have your answer here would be x minus 1 equals plus or minus 2. Then you could add 1 to both sides. All right, so you would have 3 and a -1 as the answer, right? Because -2 plus 1 is -1, and 3 plus 1 is that. All right, so there's your answers. Kind of clip that one. Hopefully you guys figured that one out. More difficult one would be adding 73 to both sides. And then when you do this setup here, you'd end up with 2x squared minus 4x, and that equals 70. Then you would divide everything by 2. Let's do gray here. All right, so if you do that, you'd have x squared minus 2x. Once again, if it's a minus 2x, we know this is going to be a plus 1 equals 35 plus 1. So that's actually going to be 36, which I'll write down here. So this would be x minus 1 squared equals 36. And then hopefully you guys see the pattern once again that emerges, right? Like I've said, completing the square is all about finding patterns. When you do this math like this, you guys will see the pattern, hopefully, that we try to get you guys to see the perfect squares and to create those. And then you can split the answer. And once again, it's going to be x minus 1 equals 6, x minus 1 equals -6, and then you simply add 1 to everything across the board. So x is 7 and -5, right? So there's your answers there. There's the math. And remember, this would be, the last one is adding 12 to both sides. When you do that setup here, it's going to be the same thing, where it'd be 2x squared minus 20x equals a 4. Then you divide everything by 2. Okay, now this is one of the larger numbers you would get, because this is minus 10 x. Remember, so find b value, take 10 divided by 2, that's 5, square 5, that would be 25. And so this would be 2 plus 25 over here. Hopefully you guys notice at this point all the steps that I do skip. And that's going to be x minus 5 squared equals 27. Now here's our first, again, our first little setup. When we do this one, it's going to be not a perfect square, but if you take the square root of 27, or not 29, sorry, if you take the square root of 27, you once again have to ask yourself, is there anything you can take out of that to simplify it? And the answer is yes. Remember, you can split this to 9 times 3, and which would end up being 3 times the square root of 3, right? So knowing the answer down here, this is going to be x minus 5 equals plus or minus 3 square root of 3. Then you would add 5 to both sides, and your answer would end up being plus or minus 3 square root of 3 plus 5. Now there's 2 of them there. Just remember, we've done that in the past. Hopefully you guys can see that and that my head is not blocking it. Just in case, I'll extend the page. All right, good luck. Congratulations on this. Work on the homework where the a value is not equal to 1. I know you guys will be successful.